rolling the dice on some things. People like to get a little creative and think outside the box, and maybe I can go to an auto show or a county fair. There won't be many recruiters there, that sort of thing. It's really tough to roll the dice on that stuff without good data behind you and good experience. And I think we would encourage you to try to really zero in on shows that offer a high percentage of their attendees that are drivers, rather than it being a broad spectrum. I think it really boils down to you got to keep your cost per hire or your cost per lead in line, just like you do with every other medium that you recruit drivers. The same sort of thing has to apply when it comes to your events. So when you get into a job fair, an auto show, or something like that, unless it's a deal where you can go down the street, spend a couple hours in an afternoon, and come back, and you don't have to worry about hotel rooms or flights, if you're factoring in and you're calculating your time out of the office into the equation on your cost per hire, things like that, unless it's just an easy local thing that's pretty inexpensive, and you can spend an afternoon and pick up a hire or two, and that's worth the return, you need to watch out for some of those things that are sort of gut feel that you don't really have a lot of data behind. Anymore also, there are shows out there that can help you with your marketing, both pre-show and post-show, and then they've got opportunities on site that allow you to drive people to your booth, or to have activities or press conferences or seminars and things like that. Look for those shows that are sort of going hand in hand with you to make the experience and the event better for you, depending on how you've defined your win. There are also shows out there, not just ours, but others that can help to provide data or insights about their audiences and their attendees. So, you've got registrants. Some people collect data at registration. Some people don't. I would focus on the ones that do, and even those that might invest in, additional data or insights about those attendees. So it could be inspection history or any other host of things that they might be able to come in and provide you with that'll assist you in your process of hiring drivers. Look for those. And I think finally, one of the things that helps in picking the right show is to try to find a show that doesn't just say, hey, we're putting on a show, everybody come, and everybody's just kind of walking around. But look for shows that are investing in content or activities that attract drivers. So if they're bringing in celebrities or having concerts, or health and wellness is increasingly important in the life of a driver and in his career now. If there's places for them to get health screenings and aid in their DOT physicals or whatever it may be, that's something that's beneficial to drivers. Of course, show trucks is a big deal as well. Nothing draws the flies like chrome in our industry, and when there's show trucks around, those guys like to be a part of that. So look for the shows that are making investments in those types of things. So, and, remember, the biggest shows might not be the best thing for you. There may be a significant portion of those attendees that aren't drivers, and you got to evaluate that and see if that's where you really want to spend your money. Look for shows that can help you with a lot of the marketing, the pre-show, on-site, and post-show stuff. Some that can help you and provide you with data. And watch out for just going with your gut. You don't want to spend 3 days out of the office or 2 days out of the office with one of your top recruiters because so-and-so 3 states away that's also a flatbed company went out of business, so I'm going to park somebody in the neighborhood over there, or a job fair that might not be focused on drivers, or some other thing that you think is going with your gut on that thing. I've seen those repeatedly not pan out from a cost per hire perspective. So picking the right show seems like a no-brainer or an obvious thing, but there are some things that you probably ought to consider there, and we would encourage you to do that. And so once you have picked out your show, really you got to figure out what you're trying to do at the show, and that's what we call defining your win. And Kyle Jernigan's going to talk a little bit more about that. Kyle?
Thank you, Stacy. And again, to everyone that's here, we really appreciate your time. Just kind of listening to us talk about some best practices. We hope that you can find some nuggets here that'll help you at your next show just to be more successful. That's definitely our hope and vision here. And like Stacy said, one of the things that you need to do for every event where you're going to exhibit is kind of define your win. And that's a terminology we use here at Randall Riley, where you find something you can count or measure and then see if you're winning. So what is the bottom line you want to see after attending a show? What are you going to measure? What's the score going to be, and are you winning? Those are some questions you need to ask before you go to the show, every night when it's over, and then when you get back. Kind of the same way you evaluate driver recruiting solutions, things like classified ads, magazines, or online websites. You can measure the calls or the apps that you get from those. You need to determine what exactly you're going to measure from an event or a show as well, kind of along the same lines as those solutions. So you decide what you're going to measure for success. Then you need to set a goal and then keep score to see if you're winning. And like I said, the key point there is you need to pick your goal. You need to define your win. That's not something that's going to come from an ad agency. That's not something another department should hand to you. Someone at your fleet has to take the reins and kind of make a proclamation where you're going to kind of put your stake in the ground and say, this is what we're going to do at an event. This is how we're going to measure it. And then we're going to evaluate it and see if it was successful. And like Stacy said, picking the right show depends on the goal you want to accomplish. So pick a goal or even a couple of goals that are targets while you're at an event. Is it to get full-length applications from drivers? If so, those are going to be tough. I've seen fleets do it. I've seen them get actual full employment applications there at a trade show, but those are fewer and farther between. So what's something maybe a little more popular that we can measure to see if we're successful? Something like badge scans. Those are inexpensive to rent. A lot of fleets use them. Some fleets still don't. The reason I think they're a huge benefit is, as a recruiter or as one of your employees is talking to a driver, just scan their badge real quick. Say, all I'm going to do is send you a thank you email for stopping by our booth. It was nice to meet you, nice talking to you today. But what you get in return is that driver's name, phone number, address, and email address. It gives you the information that you need after the show to say, I got 150 badge scans. That's 150 people I can follow back up with. That's some outbound calls that my recruiters can make to try to start some employment conversations. I can do some outbound email marketing, kind of what Doug was saying. You need to email those people, but not spam them. Don't go over the top, but just let them know that you appreciated them stopping by, or send them something in the mail. Direct mail still works, but you get that information from something as simple and low cost as just running a badge scanner. And then some other fleets, they want to make sure their name is out there. They need a presence at the show because they want to make sure drivers know where they are. They want to talk to some of the other vendors, and again, that's just an aspect of a show to consider. But if there's a way that you can kind of measure it a little bit, you can just be a little more successful as well. But some real quick advice on what to do and what not to do, because I've seen some good and bad events from fleets over my 16 years in helping fleets find drivers. The first thing is pick a goal that you can track and measure, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So at the end of the day, that night, after the show winds down, the lights turn off, count what it is that you're measuring. Were you successful? Tweak some things that afternoon. Change up who does what to try to be more successful the next day. Next, pick a goal that's attainable yet ambitious. Get your team to think big, but realistically big. They need to dream a little, stretch their legs, but be practical in what it is that you want to achieve. The last thing is make sure every person you take to the show knows the goal, and they know what they're going to do to help accomplish it. Don't just show up an event. Everybody has their collared shirt. We're good? All right, let's go. Have a bit of a game plan. Have a meeting or two before you get there where you talk about what's going to happen, who's going to do what while you're at the show. Again, fleets that do that, they plan ahead a little bit. They get everybody on the same page. Everybody's kind of working towards the same mission. What they end up with is more success. Some real quick don'ts. Don't pick a goal based on what's easy. Successful exhibitors will work a show. They see that as an opportunity, a prime opportunity to talk to as many drivers as they possibly can. They don't just sit back, have a good time, put their feet up, and enjoy being out of the office. They get as much R in ROI for the event as they possibly can. Don't set any crazy expectations. So I heard a fleet one time, so they wanted the folks in their booth to talk to 30 drivers an hour, about working for them. And I thought that was a little bit over ambitious. So the only time I've ever heard of fleets having 30 drivers or talk to 30 drivers in an hour is if they have 30 drivers in orientation. So find a goal that you can measure, but set some realistic expectations around it. Now, lastly, don't pick a goal you can't measure in real time. Something like, we're going to hire 10 drivers from this event, because you can't measure your hires from an event while the event is going on. pick something again that you can evaluate. At 6 o'clock when the show floor winds down. At 6:05, have a conversation, count up the badge scans, count the submissions, count the forms and sheets that people fill out, and just see how the day went, and then tweak your plan for the next day a little bit. So that's what we have for do's and don'ts. Now that you've kind of picked the right show, you know where you're going to exhibit, you've got some goals that you can measure, your team kind of knows what to do when they're there. It's time to pick the best location, because location, it's important. Stacy has some great recommendations. I'm going to turn it back over to him to kind of let us know what he thinks.
Hey, thanks, Kyle. That's really good stuff on defining your win. But so you're there, or you're preparing to go there, and you've got an opportunity to, you signed up for the show. Some people will, and we've seen it before, will send in their check and say, put me in the pavilion or whatever, and be good with it. But I would advise you to spend some time picking a good location. I want you, most good shows are going to have good show management that are willing to work with you on helping you and consulting with you to find a good spot. Those that don't, I would be leery of. And if any of our shows ever don't do that, call us and let us know. But spend some time with show management, and it won't take long. They can make some recommendations. They can send you an example of the floor plan. But a lot of people say, hey, put me near the entrance, and or put me on a corner or whatever. And a lot of times that's a good thing to do. But I'll be honest with you, every show that I go to, not every entrance is sort of in the traffic flow, if you know what I mean. So don't just take an entrance because or near an entrance. Entrances can be deceiving. Some of them are good and are right in the traffic flow, but you really ought to look for where the flow of the traffic's going. Corners are the same way too. A lot of people like to be on a corner, and that's really because you're going to have traffic that's coming at you at multiple directions, and there certainly are benefits to that. But if you've selected a corner, or you have been placed in a corner, or on a corner, not in a corner, but on a corner where that's outside of the traffic flow, you sort of defeated the purpose. So watch for that. Another thing we talked about earlier, shows that invest in activity or things that draw drivers. Well, a lot of these things are things that you want to be around. So if they're producing content in some capacity on the show floor, and it's content that might be helping drivers to do a better job of passing DOT physicals, or saving money on fuel economy, or something healthy, or something that's interesting to them, I try to get near that stuff. That draws traffic, that gets people moving in that direction, and we find that kind of stuff to try to find get near activity to be high traffic flow. Things like food courts. People are usually walking the floor at least once, and they're going to be there for at least a couple hours. At some point, they're going to stop by the food court, either to get lunch or a snack or something like that. So finding your way between an entrance and the food court in a high traffic area is a good idea. Another bit of activity that's always good to try to position yourself near or around is if there are show trucks on the floor. So you might take a look around at what booths are there, or if there's actually a truck a truck beauty contest going on nearby or whatever. Tagging on to some of that is good, because that's sort of, chrome is sort of the honey that draws the flies, so to speak, and that's a good idea to get near that stuff. So a couple other tidbits on location that can help you. One is to register early. So if you can identify the shows that are good for you and that fit your needs, try to get signed up for that show early. The earlier you sign up for the show, the better options you're going to have as far as booth location and selection goes. And sort of along those lines, when you find the shows that are good for you, it's a good idea to stick with those shows, because it kind of gives you the opportunity year over year to sort of pick and choose your location a little bit better. So if you want to tweak that a little bit, or so-and-so moved out, and so I can move in to that location, you're going to do that because you got a little loyalty and a little time spent with that show. If you feel like, this year, boy, we really can't, we don't need a whole lot of drivers, we're going to skip the show this year. Well, it kind of moves you to the back of the line with the shows that have typically produced for you in the past. So I'd be mindful of that. So, to kind of bring a lot of that together, when it comes to choosing the right location, spend some time with show management and let those guys consult with you a little bit on good spots. And remember that entrances can be good or bad. Same thing with corners. So it's much more important to pay attention to traffic flow. Another thing is to don't necessarily go cheap and think that location doesn't matter, that you're getting in. If you can get in the show and get 5 hires out of the show, but pay about the same amount of money, get a better location and get 10, I think it's probably worth your time to do that. In a lot of cases, that happens. So it's often a numbers game. But the reverse of that is true. I mean, you don't necessarily have to go expensive and think that that's going to trump getting a good location as well. So location matters, and that's all part of the process for you. So once you've selected your location, I think the next thing that you got to do is make sure you got the right people there for you. And Kyle's going to talk about bringing the right people.
Thank you, Stacy. Some great insights there. Plenty to think about when planning where to be on the show floor. Because not all locations are created equal. There's definitely some things to keep in mind and where you're going to be when you're there. Once you pick the right place, the right show, got your one defined, who's going to represent you? Who's going to be the representative for your company there talking to drivers? You got to bring the right people. And those right people, those are the folks that want to be there, and they're informed on the goal, your win, and also can they engage with people the way that you want them to. This means you need to bring people that are generally happy and informed, because nobody wants to talk to someone with no personality or can't answer basic questions. You need to ask yourself real quick, who are the people at my company? Just look around and think, who are the people at my company that can help me recruit drivers? If a driver walked in right now, they could start a conversation about driving for your company. Find those people and bring them with you. You're looking for folks that will engage with attendees, people that can comfortably say to a stranger, hey, how are you? And then start a conversation. We see that with our events group more than they're experts at just simply starting a conversation with, hey, how are you? Because people will generally answer with a positive response, and then you get into a conversation. Who do you drive for now? What's it like? What don't you like? Well, guess what? We've got some benefits that you may want to consider. But unless somebody can have that conversation with someone on the fly, kind of talking to a stranger, someone who can do that successfully, that's who you want to bring. You want people at your booth that know your goal and know what they're going to be doing to help accomplish it, because that does a couple of things. It keeps them working when they're at a show. They're headed down. They're not on their phone because they know the goal they've got to be working towards. And it also helps them buy in towards your win. If they see that if they can get 10 conversations with a driver, after lunch, before dinner, and that contributes to the 30 that was our goal for the day, they're bought in. They feel like they're adding value to what they're doing. It's not just a trade show to work. They're a part of the team. And then your staff needs to get folks to stop and talk for a second. You got to find those people that can stop a stranger who's just kind of looking around. Get those people to stop, have a conversation. The people who you think you can do that best, those are the people that you need to bring. And sometimes we see fleets will bring people who help process paperwork or people who are in safety. They may have tenure at the organization, but what you need is people that have the personality to work a trade show. And here's a secret to success that we see a lot of fleets do. This is a nugget I really hope everybody takes home and everybody can kind of figure out. Some of the best people to bring with you are your better drivers. And you're going to go, well, I need that guy delivering freight. He's happy. Tell you what, the guy that has a bunch of referrals in the last year or two, reward him with a couple of paid days off the road, get him in your booth, and think of it as investing in his career with you, and he'll help you recruit there at the show. And we all know that drivers talk to drivers. Drivers trust other drivers. And if you can get one there, you can get a driver to be in your booth, that's an advocate for your company, which is an invaluable resource when he's talking to other drivers about working for you. Your recruiters and their staff, they've got to be the people at the show too. I can't tell you how many times we've seen a fleet exhibit at a show and the director of recruiting isn't there. Finger is off the pulse of what's being said to drivers in the field. You need people to get out of the office. They can call people back later that night or the next day on a break. They can answer their emails later. You've got to get the right people that are there that are investing in attending an event where the drivers are going to be. Get your recruiters where the drivers are. That's a huge, huge point. And then have some simple rules there for the booth. And I'm not asking you to treat your team like kids. Just set some expectations. A couple of quick things that we see successful exhibitors do. They say none of our recruiters can have their cell phone out while they're talking to a driver. If the trade show hours are open, no cell phones out, no open laptops. The last thing I've seen people want to do is someone's buried and respond to an email for work back at the office, and drivers that could be working for them are walking right by. And nobody in your booth at the moment. Let's say that there's a lull or there's an event, an announcement. There's a stage and people are drawn over there. Send someone from your booth over there to mingle. Send them to the food court if it's lunchtime. Think of it like fishing. You've got to put more hooks in the water. If it's a slow moment, get out from your booth and have some conversations. Whatever you do, we're going to do some do's and don'ts real quick. Don't confuse aggression and friendliness. Don't be the loud, over-the-top car salesman from the TV commercial. Nobody likes that guy on TV. Nobody likes that guy in person. You need to be friendly, but not too over-the-top aggressive. Some companies think that what we'll call attractive booth brand ambassadors will get them attention and hires. While they may get you attention from the male drivers that are walking by, wanting to have their picture made, is the attention from that driver, is that on the ladies or is it on your job offer? That's just a consideration. What's the win? If it's to get a bunch of people through your booth, fine. If it's to get a bunch of attention, great. But is that particular investment leading to the return that you define as your win? If so, go for it. Last thing, nobody should be sitting idly waiting for a driver to walk in your booth. Last time I checked, drivers aren't at a trade show to fill out an application to go straight into orientation and be on the road for your company in 3 days. It's happened. I get that. But at the end of the day, you need your staff to be up and working. Have a schedule for the people who are at the booth. This is when I need you to be up away from the table. This is when we're going to trade out. Something as simple as that, kind of an uptime, downtime. You need your people to be starting conversations with anyone that walks by, anyone that will listen, anybody that will sign up, anybody that will get you a badge scan. You kind of got to go all in to try to get as many conversations as you can with as many drivers, because like we all know, recruiting is a numbers game. I need as many drivers to get as many scans, to get as many emails as I can to try to get that higher. And again, you got to get everybody on board kind of with that vision. So all of this, everything Stacey and I talked about so far, it's all very important to consider, because ultimately what you want to do at an event is be memorable. You need the attendees to remember you for all your expense in an event. And Stacey, with all of his experience, he's going to share some insights into being memorable without what we call being annoying. You want them to remember you, but you want them to remember you for the right reasons. So I'm going to turn it back over to him.
Thanks, Kyle. Hey, you may have to go over what were they called again? Was it attractive brand ambassadors? Is that right? That was
that was it. Attractive
there you go. I got to make a note of that.
Brand ambassador.
That was good. Yeah. Well, being memorable is absolutely vital, and I think it all kind of boils down to that. People remember the way you make them feel, and I kind of going back to a point that Kyle made there. In our experience, and we see it year after year after year. Every year we'll have a group come up to us, or an exhibitor will come up to us and say, well, I just didn't have a very good show this year, or whatever. And the guy right across the aisle from him will come up to us and say, this is the best show we ever had. This was unbelievable, or right 2 booths away. And we always talk about that internally and what we can do to make that better. And inevitably it turns out that the people who didn't have a great show didn't have people that engaged. And often we're sitting on a chair engaged in their mobile device, or having a conversation with the booth next to them, and as Kyle mentioned, people are just blowing by them left and right, and then they wonder why they didn't have success. So, you've got to engage when you're there. It's one of those deals that it's an interesting stat, but you really, in a situation like this, when this traffic's going by, you got less than 5 seconds to grab somebody's attention, and so you've got to do some things to do that. The brand ambassadors is certainly a way to do that, but as Kyle said, we're not sure, where that attention is lying. If you can convert them from that into engaging with you about a job, man, that's great. Sometimes that's tough to do. But there are other things that you can do to create that engagement in that 5-second stretch. One of the things you can do is try to turn that 5 seconds into 7 or 9 seconds to get their attention. There's, ways that you can do that. One of the most cost-effective ways, and it sounds counterintuitive, is to get a little bit bigger space than what your neighbors have. If everybody's in there with a 10 by 10, most of your costs on a trade show aren't really involved in the booth space itself. I think you guys all know this. This is most of your costs are or services that go around that. It's airfare, it's travel expenses, it's hotel rooms, it's going out to dinner, it's all the other things that go around it. So if you can find your best people and keep your number the same, but expand your space, you expand that 5 seconds into 7 seconds or 9 seconds, and that could be crucial in a lot of cases. Another thing that we see is that people will build their booth, and then they'll have their table out in front, and then they'll have signage out in front, and it's like, I got this paid deal here, and I got the table here, and literature is on the table. What they don't know that they've done is they've inadvertently built a wall between them and the attendees and the people that are coming by. You need to open that space up. If a driver is wanting to engage with you and he's immediately met with a barricade, it's a little easier for that person to skip on by you and go to the next one. Open that space up. Get those signs back a little bit or something like that. Give them some space. Make them feel invited into your space. That's going to stretch that 5 seconds into 7 or 9 seconds. And if you've gotten a little bit larger space, it's a little bit easier to do that. You can have an activity or a game or a celebrity or a giveaway that's actually in your space a little deeper rather than just on a table out in front that's also serving to block them from coming in. So, you want to make your booth inviting, not a barricade, and you want to have some stuff for them that'll draw them in. One of the things also about having premiums or giveaways or games and that sort of thing, put that stuff inside your booth. You don't want to have it so that you got a person out there like handing out pens or whatever it is, and it's literally a drive-by that they grab the thing in stride. Make them step into your booth to come and get something. Give yourself the opportunity to engage with them in some capacity and ask those questions that Kyle mentioned before. Give yourself a chance to sort of see if they're going to be a good fit for you if you want to pursue them further. But opening that thing up is really a big deal. But ultimately, to be memorable, you've got to make them feel good about you after they've gone. And this isn't something that necessarily applies to an event. I think it applies to life. But people remember how you make them feel, and you've got an opportunity with every one of those people to make them feel like they're special, and that's something that can certainly set you apart from everybody else. How many times have you heard, I'm leaving the company because so-and-so dispatcher, treated me like a jerk, and I don't have to put up with that stuff. A lot of that kind of stuff comes with the way you make them feel, and I don't think that's news to anybody. But the same thing applies at a trade show. It's why you need to engage with them well. I think you can also tease some of that stuff with your social media and promotions beforehand as well to kind of build some of that memorable atmosphere that you want them to take away from you. So, some things to remember on that is just make sure your booth is inviting and you've got some activities and giveaways and reasons for them to line up and talk to you. Make an effort and figure out little ways to stretch that amount of time that you've got to get their attention. A larger booth than everybody else may be big. I don't think you got to get the biggest one in the deal. If you don't have engaging people, that won't work. And if you've built the wall around your booth, then that won't work either. So, and I think that brings us to your booth itself. A lot of people are using the same display that they've had for the last 10 years. Take a look at that. You don't have to necessarily break the bank, but consider freshening up your booth occasionally. I think it'll create a little more energy and make you feel a little more modern. But I think it boils down to how you make them feel, and if you can make them feel a little bit differently than everybody else because you've engaged them, you've brought them in, you're welcoming to them, you've given them something, I think it's going to turn into conversions a lot better, or wins as we call them, a lot better than in some of the traditional ways things have been done. So, you've mapped out your event, you've done the things on site that you need to do, and the show's kind of winding down. We're to the point now that you've got to nurture those leads, and it's the things that you do after your event are just as important, if not more important, than some of the things that you do on site. So we're going to circle back to Doug for some vital insights on lead nurturing. Doug? Doug, you may be muted.
Yeah, I was muted. Thank you, Stacy. Still better to be muted and not realize it than to not realize that you aren't muted. So all in all, that could have been worse. So I work in marketing, and what I do is I generate leads. You guys work in recruiting, and you have a very similar job to my job. And you guys, we've learned so many great things in this webinar about, how to start out with picking the right shows. And even if you do all of this stuff right, and you're leaving the show and you've got thousands of email addresses and phone numbers and everybody's high-fiving each other, that's great. But what comes next? What do you do with those email addresses and phone numbers? Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to get back in touch with these people. Chances are the conversation they had with you at that trade show is the first time they've interacted with your fleet. And they may either not be looking for a position, or they may just not be ready to go with you guys because they don't know you that well. So what you've got to do is generate high quality content that drivers are going to want to engage with. It might be a funny meme that's related to trucking. It might be helpful tips for staying healthy on the road, whether it's entertainment or whether it's something that makes them feel emotionally connected to the industry. Whatever it is that you create, you've got to create content that the drivers want to engage with. It shouldn't be all about your fleet. In fact, it really shouldn't be about your fleet at all. It should be about the driver and entertaining them and informing them and providing value to them through content. And if you do that, what you're going to find is that drivers will sign up for your newsletter. Drivers will follow you on social media, Facebook and Twitter. And in fact, the list that you get at trade shows, you can specifically take those and target just those people on Facebook and Twitter and some other platforms as well. Those phone numbers and email addresses that you're getting through badge scans or raffle entries or whatever lead generation method, whatever your win was for that show, those are worth their weight in gold. Don't waste those. And it's also very, very important that you have a plan for post-show follow-up and content generation before you leave for the show. Coming back from a longer trade show that's 2 or 3 or 4 days, it's exhausting. At least it is for me. When I get back from a trade show that's taken that long, I might take a day off. I may not. Maybe I'll just come in a little late the next day, but I'm usually pretty tired. That is not the time when I want to sit down and hammer out a lead nurturing process. You've got to do that before you leave, and you've got to have content ready to go before you leave as well. Just keep in mind that you don't get contact information just to hammer home, you need to drive for us, you need to drive for us. They know that you're hiring. You were at the event recruiting. What's important is that you stay top of mind for that driver and you build a relationship with that driver. Because if you're that driver's favorite fleet, they're going to come drive for you. They will. It might not be tomorrow, but at some point in the next 6 months, the next year, that driver's going to be looking for a new job. Maybe it's the dispatcher at his current position that ticked him off a little bit. He's going to be looking for a new job, and you're going to be the fleet that he goes with. This is the type of thing that helps every ad you run, whether it's print or social media or something through a remarketing campaign. Everything lifts as your brand has a better and better reputation. So don't forget that the post-show follow-up is where you take all the handshakes and smiles that you had at that show and actually turn them into drivers who are at your orientation. That's easily the part of the process that people forget the most often. So obviously, get email addresses. That's super important as we're going through the do's and don'ts here. Have content for post-show follow-up. Don't spam. Don't spam. Drivers don't like getting spammed any more than you do. If somebody sends me more than one email in a day and they don't have a really good reason, they're going right into my spam folder. And also, don't fall into the trap of just saying, hey, we scanned 3,000 badges. It was awesome. That's great, and maybe 3,000 badge scans is a great show for you. But if those badge scans, if you're going to a show and you have thousands of email addresses and you send out an email and your open rate is 2% and your click-through rate's even lower than that, you're probably not going to the right show, or at the very least, you're not talking to the right people at that show. So keep that in mind. So what have we learned out here? We've got choose the right trade shows. You can't be successful if you're not at the right shows. You've got to define your win and know why you're there and what you're trying to accomplish. You've got to choose the right location. You've got to bring the right people to your event. Boy, we just cannot emphasize that enough. Bringing the right people is so important. You've got to invest in your booth and be memorable. And of course, as we just discussed, you've got to nurture those leads and turn those email addresses into drivers. That's what this is all about. So we're going to go ahead and jump into questions now. We've had a couple of people tweet in with questions. You can also ask any questions you have for us through the GoToWebinar little question doohickey here. But before we do that, you guys are all going to get an email in just a few minutes when we're done with the webinar. We would like to get you a packet of information about how you can leverage GATS this year to find the drivers that your fleet needs. There is only one kind of application that you can generate that comes with eye contact and a handshake and a smile, and we want to help you generate those types of applications this August in Dallas. So go ahead and download that exhibitor packet, check it out, see if this is something that can help you find the drivers you need. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and jump into questions. 1 second here while I pull those up. All right. So we have one question, and Stacy, I'm going to go ahead and throw this to you. This is from Twitter. What do you think is the most common mistake that you see people making at especially bigger trade shows like GATS?
Well, it's a couple of things, it's why you've got to find that middle ground. The most common mistake, I'll be honest with you, is the most common mistake that we make at dinner with our spouse or engaging at work or whatever it is, and that is paying too much attention to the mobile device. And it's an easy crutch. It's one of those things that, things aren't, it's day 2, 2.5, 3, I've been here for a few hours. I've got this thing coming up this weekend I got to get to, or whatever. It's so tempting to do that, and we see it at our shows. We had one last week, and the same thing. Just highly qualified people walking around ready to engage, and those people that paid money for that engagement just absolutely being blind to them being right in front of them. And heads down in mobile devices is the thing. And you just need, if I were to make a recommendation to anybody that is participating in any of our events, as a manager, as a leader of that group, you've got to set some standards there, and you've got to set an example as well. But you need some rules, and you need to probably create some space for them to do that. If you go all day long and they don't get a break and they don't get a half hour here or there every hour or two, they're going to be more tempted to do that more frequently. But if they know that, hey, I'm going to go for an hour and a half, I'm going to be able to check things afterwards or whatever, I got my break coming up then, that's a good thing to do. I think the second thing that mistake that we see is something that Kyle touched on in his part, and that was sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's not confusing being friendly with being aggressive. And some of that aggressiveness can lead to some quick defensiveness and even hostility if you're not careful. So that middle ground, engaging, but engaging in a welcoming and warm way. Those are the biggest mistakes that, I'll be honest with you, we see. And I think it all, again, comes back to the way you treat people. And if you've got some nice rules set up in place to deal with that and to factor that into your experience, you're going to be successful.
Fantastic. All right, we've got another question here, and this is going to be for you, Kyle. Someone was asking, how many people should you bring to a trade show? Now, obviously, there's some follow-up questions that you could probably have for that person, but Kyle, why don't you go ahead and just jump in? Like, should I bring 30 people? Should I bring 10? Is more always better?
Sure. I hate to always answer any question with "it depends," but I'm just going to kind of lay a what-if scenario and then kind of describe what I would recommend. You know, if you have a typical 10 by 10, I think you need at least 3 people there at all times. So you can have one person sitting down and 2 people standing up talking to people as they go by, and then you just rotate. You know, every 30 minutes somebody sits down. So you may have to be up for 2 30-minute sessions in a row, but then you can take a break. Just like what Stacy was saying, you need to have a schedule, a plan, and have the people there. If you grow to about a 10 by 20, not to be too salesy, but what Stacy said earlier, the cost is incremental, but you can easily slip in 2 3 more people there, have some more information and collateral available, and a lot more space to bring someone in versus just standing there on the carpet in between booths, and you may feel a little cramped. You can have a little more space to not necessarily to have a private conversation, but a lot more private one-on-one time with that person when you need it. So I kind of think if you're in that 10 by 10, 10 by 20 range, somewhere 3 or so. If you have a 10 by 10, 10 by 20, about 5, and kind of grow it from there. But I think the number one thing to consider is the right people is better than having more people. Making sure you've got people that can have that conversation, that can talk to a stranger, that can say, "Hey, how are you?" and then carry on a conversation and get them engaged in a conversation about driving for your organization.
Fantastic. Fantastic. We did get one question here that is slightly off topic, but that I neglected to mention earlier. We are going to have this presentation for you guys to download, as well as a recording of this webinar up for you guys just as soon as I can get that taken care of, which is going to be tomorrow morning. So tomorrow morning, I'll send out an email to everybody just saying, hey, the recording and the presentation are here, in case you want to share it with someone else, or maybe you had other questions. And of course, you can always go to randallriley.com and get in touch with us if you have any questions at all about things we can help you out with. I have one last question here, and we're just about out of time. But we have a question here related to pre-show marketing. And we didn't talk a lot about pre-show marketing. I'm going to go ahead and answer this one. We didn't talk a lot about pre-show marketing, but it is very, very important to the success of an event. You can get away with having a smaller booth maybe, or even being tucked away back in a corner if you have attendees that are actively seeking out your booth. The only way to do that, though, is with really solid, not aggressive, but solid messaging in your pre-show marketing. You've got to have a reason for drivers to come by your booth. It might be entering a raffle, or it might be entering to a giveaway that maybe you give everyone, hey, first 50 people to come by the booth get one of these. Those are all good ways to get people to come by your booth. Maybe you're giving out free research or free information of some type, or maybe you're even doing a free health screening in your booth or something like that. Giving people a reason to come to your booth, and it ties in very much with the things that we talked about with being memorable. But keep in mind that any show, especially a larger one like GATS, has a lot of options for you, ways that you can get in touch with attendees before the show. And again, like Stacy said, the difference between a 10 by 10 and a 10 by 20 is not a big difference in your overall budget for what it costs you to attend the show. Pre-show marketing is the same thing. You can spend a little bit of money before the show to get your name out there so that drivers are going to come look for your booth without breaking the bank, without doubling your budget or anything ridiculous like that. It's not all that expensive, and it can make sure that you have a really, really successful show. All right, guys. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This has been fantastic. I want to especially thank Kyle and Stacy for taking the time to share their expertise with us. I want to thank all you guys for attending. This has been fantastic. If you have any questions at all about how we can help you find drivers at events, please get in touch with us. We would love to talk to you. Thanks for attending, everybody. Have a good one.